Okay, so in this video, we are actually going to check out and explore how we can make a player jump. So to start off, make sure you have watched through the video going over how to make a player move left and right. So at this point in time, I already have this working, where if I press the A key, the player moves left. If I let go, they stop. If I press the D key, they move right. If I let go, they stop. So now what we want to do is we want to add a jump function to this as well. And so let's go ahead and start thinking through how to do this. And so it turns out jumping, there's different ways of doing this. One way would be to use vectors. We will not be doing that way though, just because you might not know vector math and all that good stuff. So instead I'm going to show you all a different way of doing this. But when it comes to jumping, there's actually a few different stages that we have to think about. One is the jump stage, where you start off on the ground, but then you start moving up. So I'm going to call this the jumping stage. So this is the jumping stage. We'll have to code that up. Second thing is there's also going to be a stage where you have reached the top of the jump. So I'm going to put a little dotted line here. This dotted line represents the highest Y that you can get to, like at the top of your jump. And you know what? If you're doing Rec Mode Center, which maybe many of you probably are, what you can do is have that dotted line be, of course, in the center. But this represents the Y value that represents the highest point of your jump. So I'm going to call this the height, maybe the top of jump? Yeah, I'll say top of jump. That's what we'll call it. The top of jump. Those are the first two stages. We're going to have a couple more as well. The third stage, that happens after the top of jump. That's when you have just now reached the top of your jump, and now you start going down. So that's just you falling. That's the third stage, and there's one more as well. That final stage is stage 4. This is when you land back on the ground. And so that is the landing stage. So the reason I kind of laid out this way is because we have to implement all of these in code. Because if we think about it, for stage 1, jumping, what we have to do here is when you press the W key, the player has to keep moving up at a certain speed until they reach the top of jump. So what the top of jump stage does is it checks when you've reached the top, and it makes you stop jumping upwards. And instead, it makes you start falling downwards. Once that happens, you then do stage 3. That's when you start falling. And then, of course, that's going to keep on happening every frame until you reach the landing stage. That recognizes when you land on the ground, and it makes you stop falling. And so let's go ahead and implement that. So I'm going to go back up to processing here. So let's see. So this is my example where we have the player that moves left and right. Like that. And so now let's go ahead and start implementing this. Well, we're going to go back into the player class, and we are going to add some code. Just like we have booleans for is moving left and is moving right, we're going to have some booleans representing, are we jumping upwards or are we jumping downwards? In other words, not jumping downwards, falling. So are we jumping up or are we falling down? So I'm going to make some more booleans here. Boolean is jumping, and a boolean for falling. So I'm going to call that is falling. And we're going to set our code up where if this boolean's ever true, start moving on up. Whereas if the is falling boolean is true, you should be going down. And so by manipulating these booleans, we'll be able to control our player. And so cool. I just made some new variables. That means we need to initialize them. So I'm going to go to my constructor. Again, the constructor is what initializes every variable. And so for me, I know I want these booleans to be false, when you first initialize the player. So I'm going to go ahead and just hard code them to be false. So not is moving, it'd be is jumping will be false, and is falling will also be false. Cool. So now let's just make some functions that will make it where if these are true, you either move up or down. So I think that should be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to come on down here and make a jumping function, void jump. I'm going to say jumping. Or you can call it jump as well. One thing I'm going to call mine jumping. So void jumping. And I'm going to say if is jumping is true, then make your player move up. So I'm going to say my y, and moving up, again, for the y, if I want to move up, I have to subtract from the y. So I'm going to say minus equals speed. And if you want to, right now, this is like a run speed because it's used here. If you want, you can also use that for the jump speed, or you can make a different variable for jump speed if you want that to be a different speed. For now, for just being quick, I'm going to leave this as the same. So if jumping is true, then when I press my jump button, I'll start going up, and then I will subtract the speed from my y to make my player move up. Now, I'm also going to have a function for my falling. So void falling, it's going to do the same thing, where if is jumping, not is jumping, if is falling is true, then start falling. Well, it's going to be the same line as this, except for going down with the y, I'm going to be adding. And so, cool. The logic behind these is identical to kind of these if statements in our move function, except they have to do with up and down movement. Now, if we go back to our kind of diagram here, we have these 4 steps. We already have a function now that will make us jump up and move upwards, and we have a function that will help us move downward, right? So that means 1 and 3 are mostly done. However, we do not have anything to say when do you start jumping, when do you stop jumping and start falling, and also when do you stop falling. So we need to make kind of these transition things work as well. So first of all, I guess let's think about how do we start jumping. Well, that's pretty easy. We can come on over here, back to our key pressed, and just like here, where if we press a certain key, we start moving in a certain direction. We can do the same thing, but if, for my case, if I press the W key, I want my player to move up in a jump. So I'm just going to say if the key I'm pushing is W, I'm going to start making my player move up. P1 dot is jumping is true. And now, oops, sorry, we're doing assignment, so 1 equal sign. That will actually change the value of this, of course. 2 equal signs is asking the question. Cool. Now you might be tempted to also come in here and put the same if statement in the key released, but make the Boolean false. What that would do, though, is that would make it where when you release the key, you stop jumping. But that's not how jumping usually works, right? Because if you imagine, if you jumped in real life, you can't just stop jumping on a whim. You know, if you're moving up, you're moving up. You can't stop yourself, right? You have to kind of let yourself ride through the whole jump arc. So that means we actually are not going to make it false in this key released. Now, first of all, let's just do a test. Let's press play and see what happens. Obviously, we're not finished yet. I just want to see what happens. Okay, I'm going to press the W key. Oh, and nothing's happening. I actually did not expect this error. I know what it is, though. I did not call my jumping function. So make sure we call our new functions here. P1.jumping, but also P1.falling. Cool. Okay, now let's give this a test. Cool. We have this here. Now, if I press the W key, oh, I'm moving up. I'm jumping up. But of course, if we keep watching this, as you may guess, I never come down. So right now, is jumping was made to be true. So if I print out P1.is jumping and press play on that, it starts off as false. If I press the W key, it becomes true. but it never becomes false. So I never never stop jumping upwards, right? So now what we have to do is we have to write a function to make it where you stop jumping upwards and start falling down. In other words, we have to code a function to recognize when we're at the top of the jump. This kind of transition step. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go inside my player class, and let's make another function here called void. I'm going to call this top of jump. And so what this should do, this should recognize when you've reached the top of your jump. Now, how do we do that? Well, to do that, we need to actually have a few more variables. Because if we kind of think about this, we need, let's see, so if we have this here, we have to know how high is the player allowed to jump. In other words, what is this distance? I'm going to call this distance jump height. So we need jump height, that is the distance. We also need to know what is this y value, right? The y value there represents the highest point you can jump. And so I'm going to call this, let's say, y jump height. Or jump height y, something like that, right? I kind of like jump height y maybe, but something along those lines. If we have those variables, we can now check if the y has reached to the top of the jump height, then stop jumping and start the process of falling. So I'm going to come back to my player. I'm going to go ahead and make those new variables as well. So let's see, I'm going to say int. I'm going to make one called jump height. Again, this is the distance that you can jump upwards. We can also do not just jump height, we can also do that y value. So I think I'm going to call that, let's see, what did I come up with? Jump height y. I'm going to call this top of jump y. I don't know if I like that name. I might change that if I think of something better, but this is the y value of the top of your jump. So cool. So that's what these are. Since I made new variables, I of course have to initialize them. What initializes them? Well, the constructor function, of course. So now let's go ahead and initialize these guys. So for my jump height, this is something that you can tweak. You can make whatever you want. I'm going to make mine maybe 100. Something like that. I can always make that bigger if I want to. And now I also need to define or initialize my top of jump y value. You know what? I'm going to call this my tallest y, or highest y. Highest y. Oop, that's not how you spell it. Highest y. Highest y. Okay, so something like that. You can name it whatever you want, of course, if you find a bigger or better name. So highest y, how are we going to define that? Well, I'm going to define that as, if we kind of think about it, if we go back to our little thing here, if I come down and make a little drawing, we have our ground, we have our player, and we have the dotted line that represents the height of your jump. Well, if you're doing direct mode center, the current position is the center of your square. And so the distance here from this to this, well, this distance is actually your jump height. And so what that means, if we want to define this y value, it's just going to be your current y value minus your height, your jump height. So that's how we get this value up here. So let's go ahead and do that then. So our highest y is just going to be equal to our current y minus the jump height. Cool. So that means now what we can do is in our function top of jump, we can check to see if our y is ever past our top of y jump, our highest y. So if our current y, if it is equal to or also less than. Less than, of course, meaning above. If you're less than or equal to your highest y, what you want to do is you want to stop jumping. Oop. Highest y does not exist. I spelled that differently. Highest y. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Highest y. Okay, something like that. So if y is less than, if it's above the highest y or equal to, you want to stop jumping. So we're going to say is jumping equals false. Cool. So let's go ahead and test that. We come into our setup and draw. Make sure to call your top of jump function, top of jump. And let's give this a test. Okay, I'm going to press my jump key. And you notice that when I press the W key, he jumped up, and then he stopped here. So he stopped at the top of his jump, which is good. But of course, he did not start falling. Well, how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is in our top of jump function, don't just stop jumping. Jumping upward. You also want to start falling. So let's make is falling equal to true. I'm going to leave a little comment here, start falling downward. So now that we have this added, let's give it a little test. Press play, press the W key, jump up, and it goes down. Oh, but you keep on going down forever and ever and ever. That is happening, of course, because we did not implement our step 4, our landing kind of stage here. The landing stage recognizes when your player hits the ground. For us, let's make the ground the bottom of the window. And so what that means is that if our y is kind of close enough where you're hitting the bottom of the window, then you should stop falling. Well, if we're using Rec Mode Center, which I think we are, and if not, we should go ahead and implement that. But if we're using Rec Mode Center, like you've been doing for most of the semester, if you're taking 103 at least, that means the y value of your player when you're hitting the ground will be right here. But what is this value? Well, we know that we call the height of the player h, and we also know that the y of the bottom of the window is the built-in variable height, which means that the y of our player when we hit the ground is going to be equal to the height of the window, which again represents the y of the bottom edge of the window, minus, because if we go here, we go up to our middle of our player, that's going up, so it's minus h divided by 2. So if our y of our player is ever equal to this, or a little bit past this, we know we have landed. So it's going to make a function that checks this and makes it so we stop falling. So let's come on over here. I'm going to make another function called void land. Something like this. It's going to look very similar to our top of jump function. It's going to be if our y value is either equal to our height minus h divided by 2, but also if you go past it, because sometimes depending on your speed, you might actually go past this value a little bit. But if you go past this, you're going to be greater than this. So we're going to say if y is greater than or equal to, let's see, the height of the window minus h divided by 2. If that is the case, what do we want to do? Well, we want to stop falling. So we're going to make falling equal to false. Now a little comment here, stop falling. Oh, is falling. There we go. So I'm going to come on over here, make sure to call my land function, p1.land. Press play. Now if I press the W key, up and down. Oh, and you see he did land on the bottom. He stopped falling. Now notice, though, that when he landed, he did go through the bottom of the window a little bit. So he didn't actually stop exactly then. That's because of the speed. So he actually went like one frame a little bit past. There's two things we could do to help fix this. One is we don't check if it's greater than or equal to, just, well, no, I guess we have to do that. One thing we have to do, though, that will definitely fix this is don't just stop falling, but also make it where whenever you hit, you also snap to this position, because we know this position is exactly equal to the position that will make the player exactly touching the bottom of the window. So what we can do is not only stop falling, but let's also make it where you're exactly touching the bottom of the window. We do that by making your y exactly equal to height minus h divided by 2. I'm going to make a little comment here. Snap player to position where they are standing on bottom of window. It's a long sentence, but it's okay. I'm going to press play. Okay, going to press my W key again. Boop. That doesn't seem quite right. You might have also saw another arrow there as well. Let's see. Ooh, give me just a second. Okay, sorry, I was looking at my recording. Okay, yeah, so let's take a look at this here. We have this. He definitely stopped falling. Oh, I know what's going on. Guys, I forgot to actually go to Rect Mode Center. I never did Rect Mode Center. So things are a bit weird. So I want to make sure in my render function, you can put this in a few spots. I'm going to put this in my render function, Rect Mode Center. Let's see if that fixes things a little bit. Ah, way better. Look at that. Cool. Okay, so that's pretty good. You'll also notice, though, I can move around. I can jump and fall. But now when I press W again, I'm still going way up here. So that's a bit weird. That's probably not what you want, right? I wanted it just to be like 100 pixels. That should be like this high. So why is it going all the way up there? Well, it's going all the way up there because the thing that controls how high I go up is this highest Y variable. And that highest Y variable was defined in the constructor, which means it was started at the very beginning of my program. So if I press play again, start my program over, well, I can see here my highest Y is probably the Y value here where my cursor is. So if I press my W key, you'll notice the player went up to that height. And even though it fell all the way down, if I press W again, it goes to that same height every time. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that whenever we press the W key, we also reset our highest Y. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this line of code here, the one that we put in our constructor to initialize highest Y. I'm going to make sure that whenever we press the W key, we also reform and redefine that relationship. So I'm going to paste that line of code here. It's going to freak out because it doesn't recognize these variables. That's because these variables are, of course, inside our player class. So we have to make processing understand we want it to use the variables from P1. So I'm going to say P1.highestY, P1.y, and P1.jumpHeight. So this will redefine the highest Y every time we press the W key. So I'm going to press play. I'm going to press the W key. There he goes. I'm going to press it again. Boop, boop, boop. So now that's kind of what we're doing here. Now, watch what happens, though, if I press my W key a lot. Oh, I can keep on pressing it, and he went way on up. In fact, now he's kind of stuck. I get this weird error. He's like stuck up here. I'm going to show you all that again. If I press play once, or press W once, it's normal jump. Press it once, normal jump. But if I start pressing it a lot, boop, 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 I start like freaking my player out. Sometimes it gets stuck here. If I press play again and press it W really fast, I just keep moving up. Press it while he's falling. He gets kind of weird. So there's like a weird kind of thing happening if you press the W key lots of times. What's happening is that sometimes jumping is becoming true when it should not be becoming true. So if you think about it in real life, if you jump in real life, jump upwards, while you're in the air, you can't start a new jump. Right? If you did, you would have like a double jump, which I guess some games do have, maybe a triple jump or something like that. But that's not what we have in real life, and that's not what we're going for in this kind of game here. So you want to make sure that you do is jumping. This cannot start unless you're not already jumping and not already falling. In other words, you do not want to start a jump unless you are not jumping already and you are not falling. So we need to make our code also do that. So here, where we start a jump, I have a little comment here, start a new jump. We want to make sure this does not happen unless you're not currently jumping. So if you press the W key and you're not jumping, so is jumping equals false, and you're not already falling, because of course if you jump in real life and you start falling, well, while you're falling, you can't start a new jump, right? You can't start a new jump until you've stopped falling and you hit the ground. So we want to also check that. So you should only be able to jump if you're not jumping and you're not falling. Cool, let's give this a test. I'm going to press the W key once. Cool, press it once. Cool, press it once. Cool, I'm going to press W a lot. Press it a lot, nothing weird's happening. I'm going to hold it down. And now we get a very normal looking jump. And I can move around, boop, boop, all that good stuff. And now, of course, you can tweak this. So if this jump is too short for you, all you have to do is go inside your player class, make your jump height bigger. So let's make it like 300. Press play again. Press W. Press it now. And notice it's going about 3 times higher for your jump. And if you want, you can make different speed variables so that you jump faster or fall slower or whatever you want to do. Now you have kind of the framework to play around with your player and get that jump feeling nice and good. So yeah, so that's how you make a player jump. Thank you so much.